Spinners of Yarns podcast, Rule Galloway with Alastair McKay, author, journalist, musician.
Well, I wouldn't say that, no.
But you've done some music in the past.
Yeah, I was the non-singing singer, so
Yeah.
when you, in the area where you didn't have to sing, I was the singer.
So it's kind of like we were just talking like this, you weren't born in Scotland.
No, due to an accident of economics, I was born in Harold Wood, so I'm an Essex man, as you can tell from my accent.
Of course.
So my dad was working at a power station down here, so for 6 months or so we lived there, and then briefly went to Seaton Sluice in Northumberland till I was 4, and then home to Scotland in North Berwick.
Is North Berwick in Scotland or is it in England?
Oh well, no, I think you're making a mistake. There's Berwick.
Oh no, North Berwick, yeah, that's on the coast there near Gulane.
Gullen, yeah.
Gullen, yeah.
Gulane,
yeah,
is what the posh people up the hill call it.
Of course. So, what age then did you move to North Berwick?
4, so I did all my school there.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, obviously music became of an interest to you because that's been your career. When did you first?
Well, I mean, I say in the book, it wasn't through school that I learned to like music because we had such punitive music lessons.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole Billy Connolly routine about that, about singing Mary's Wedding and stuff. We sang Mary's Wedding and the Banana Boat song endlessly, and we did this thing where you had to do with the piano, is the first note higher or lower than the next note? And we just had no clue what that was about. And but as punk happened, so much later on, there was a kind of supply teacher who came to the school, and he brought a record player and put it in the school hall and said, you can bring in records. So I'd picked up a couple of punk records. My brother had gone to university in Edinburgh, and he had brought the news home, and we used to buy the music papers. So we all brought in records, and it was just completely weird being allowed to play punk records in the school. After a couple of weeks, it's back to the Banana Boat song, but the seed was sown.
So what was the first record that you bought? It is in the book.
The first one ever.
Yeah.
Topical. It was Gary Glitter. I'm the leader of the gang I am. I mean, less said about Gary Glitter the better. I remember hearing Gary Glitter on Radio Luxembourg, and this is quite a seedy memory now, but because Radio Luxembourg used to fade in and out all the time like that.
Yeah.
So there was this thing where I think his record was like the Power Play, which was on every hour. And you've got to remember, it wasn't easy to hear records in those days. There was no streaming. I'm not sure if even Radio 1 went into the evenings. I can't remember.
I think it did.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it stopped at a certain time, didn't it? At night time.
Yeah. I mean, it must have later for John Peel and all that, but Gary Glitter was on, and there was this competition to win his sweat-stained shirt. And so I'm sitting in the living room thinking, I could win Gary Glitter's sweat-stained shirt. And my parents, being moral citizens, were tutting away. And it makes me a bit creeped out to think about it now. But
we were in the 70s, we were presented with music via Top of the Pops and, certain...
That was roughly it, yeah. Lift Off with Asia, I remember. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember that, no. What was that?
It was on at 4:30 or something like that. And there was a pop band on it. And... I don't know about the chronology, but there was also that Flintlock series. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember Flintlock, yeah.
Sort of strange manufactured band.
Yeah.
Was Pauline Quirk on that? I think she was.
Yeah.
And she persuaded them to perform naked, I seem to remember.
Did she?
Yeah. But so it was very sparse, the information was very sparse.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the thing I pick up in the book, is we got all the news from the music papers, and I bought Sounds, my brother bought the NME, we sometimes bought the Melody Maker.
Yeah.
But also, we both kept scrapbooks, and I got these from a loft a couple of years ago. And there's all these magazines you've completely forgotten about, like hits magazines, probably for girls, but I didn't really notice. So you got Slade posters and Mark Bolan posters and all of that. Also Disco 45, I remember. Do you remember it had lyrics in it, and getting the lyrics was like a kind of bit of secret information.
Yeah.
So a terrible magazine, but here are the lyrics, you know. So we found it wherever we could find it, really, I think.
Yeah. But it was still coming through the pop thing, so...
Yeah.
You know, kind of like punk. For me, even though I'd seen punk and I was aware of punk, it wasn't until I moved to Scotland in the summer of '78 that you couldn't escape it. It was everywhere.
Yeah, because it happened a little bit later in Scotland. I mean, punk proper, you know. I mean, I can remember, I think, might be wrong, I think Susie and the Banshees played in Edinburgh at Clouds in '77. If that's the right year. I was there at that, like I was allowed to go to that.
Yeah.
A lot of people say the White Riot tour was the big kind of year zero moment in Scotland.
Yeah.
And those same people now claim that they were totally into the Subway Sect and not so into the Clash, because that's a bit cool.
And the Slits played as well.
The Slits did play. And, I mean, I love all the bands, the Buzzcocks as well.
Yeah.
The Jam were on that too. I was a big Jam fan, which is a bit less cool these days, I think. But you know, the Jam were my band. My brother was into the Clash, so you couldn't afford many records. So if one of you bought one and the other one bought the other one, you had more. You know?
Yeah. The one thing that I do remember, you know, when I moved to Scotland, was how many good record shops Edinburgh had.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, did you make your trip up to Edinburgh regular?
It wouldn't be that regular because I didn't have much money. But when I had money, so when you would have enough money for an album, which I can't remember, it was like £3 or something like that. I would spend a day in Edinburgh, and that day was a circuit where you would get off the train, and there'd be like a square that you would walk around, which is like 2 or 3 miles long.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of them on the north side of Princes Street. So there was Bruce's Records. Bruce, who became manager of Simple Minds, did Zoom Records with the Valves.
Yeah.
So Bruce's was a big shop. There was a shop called Hell, where the bag said, "I got it at Hell."
Yeah. How long did that last for? Because I don't remember that. I know the name.
I don't know. It was there. It was there for a while.
Yeah.
There was also the other record shop. I think the other record shop was where I bought my first punk record, which was the Dams, Neat Neat Neat.
Yeah.
That was down off the Royal Mile.
Yeah. That was a great shop because it was big, but it had the upstairs section, which was a great meeting place, and that's where they had the singles and the T-shirts and the games machines.
They did, yeah. And Hot Wax was another one in Coburn Street, which had the singles in the window.
Yeah.
So you could stand and stare at the window in a meaningful way. And there was Phoenix as well, which was a bit more hippie-ish.
Where was Phoenix?
I think it was in the High Street. It was like a street up from Hot Wax.
Right, okay.
And it was a bit more, it smelled of patchouli and hippies.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but, you know, they did have punk stuff, but they had long hairs in there. And Easy Rider was the furthest away of that, which was part of the, what was it called? The Greyfriars Market.
Yeah.
So it smelled heavily of denim in there.
Yeah.
And had famously the rudest staff in the whole world. So.
But it was a great place to get second-hand records in the early 80s. You know, when I did move to Edinburgh in '83, I'd go in there once a month, and you'd see things that you wouldn't see anywhere else.
They had millions. I mean, I've had conversations like this because I used to go in. Obviously, you weren't there all that often, but I used to want to find Velvet Underground records, and it was impossible. Now, I've since met people who said they found them in there. I never found them in there. But I did get I used to nervously ask for bootlegs as well, and they would look at you like you were the police, you know. But I did get the Buzzcocks Time's Up in there. So I think Gordon, the drummer of the Valves, used to work in there, so he was a friendly face too. So.
Yeah, and there was Ripping Records as well, if you remember that one.
Yeah. Ripping on the Bridges where you got all the tickets. Yeah,
and they did second-hand singles upstairs.
Yeah,
you know that you'd occasionally find something that you wanted.
Yeah, there's probably others, you know.
But it was in '78 specifically because, you know, '78, the end of '78, '79 was really, you know, when I started buying records, and you would have the other record shop, but you'd do the Triangle on Frederick Street at that point, where you had Bruce's on Rose Street, you had Virgin on the corner, just round the corner from Bruce's on Frederick Street, and then opposite you had Listen Records.
That's right, yeah.
And for a teenage kind of like punk rocker, having Big John serving behind the counter was always a big thing to go in and to spot him and have a chat.
See, I was probably not there at that point. Because I went to Aberdeen University in '79.
Yeah.
And there was a shop called One Up there, which was the great shop in Aberdeen. They had 2 branches, but in the one on Rosemount Viaduct, where I bought Joy Division records and stuff like that, there was a guy called Scars who was a bit like Big John. He was like just a scary punk. So he didn't say much, but he looked the part, you know.
So it's kind of like when punk, you know, obviously went through different phases and stages, you know, kind of like in 76, 77, you had all the bands bringing through, and a lot of people really dropped punk, particularly in Edinburgh, you know, from 78 onwards, and you know, musically things changed.
Well, yeah, for me actually the musical part happens after punk, because the kind of Ramalama thing of punk. Well, I shouldn't be embarrassed. I'm a little bit embarrassed by some of the stuff I did during the punk time, but it's actually because it was all there was. So, you know, we used to run buses up from North Berwick to the concerts in Edinburgh, because you couldn't get back otherwise. So the only way to do it was you got like 30 people from the school to go on a bus. So we saw people like the Buzzcocks and Blondie and stuff like that. But we did see Sham 69, I think twice in that era, and
I was at Coasters.
They did the Odeon, I'm pretty sure as well. But I vividly remember being on the bus and having this argument with somebody about, because they were on Top of the Pops and Jimmy Purcell's wearing a clean white shirt, that this was they were finished, you know. He was too clean.
I went to see them the end of last year, which was probably the best time that I saw them, because they didn't do all the hits.
Oh really?
Yeah.
What did they do instead?
They did some of the lesser known songs from the first two albums, you know, which were, it just made it a bit more interesting than going down the classics route.
Well, the Kids Are United, they play that at West Ham. I go and see West Ham. They play that quite often. It's like such a bad record. But
so did you get into football? You must have got into football then. I know you did, because it's in the book.
Yeah, well, football, around that period I sort of got out of it because it became horrible, you know. My dad used to take me to see Hibs, although I support Celtic for complete glory hunting reasons, and West Ham because that's where I was born. Also Brecon City because my grandparents were from there, so it's a complicated business. But when I went to Aberdeen, I used to, naively, I wore a Celtic scarf in Aberdeen for a very short time, and I just got such dog's abuse from people in the street, and threatened with violence, that I thought, oh, this isn't the thing. So consequently, I was there for Aberdeen's triumphant kind of European Alex Ferguson period, but I never went to any of the games. I used to hear the crowd, and I kind of wish I hadn't been put off, because it would have been interesting. But
we moved up to 78, and then that's I was 11, and I love football. You know, I played it, and I went to 3 football matches, and it didn't gel with me. You know, I found that the football was quite grey. You know, it was just
Scottish football skill levels.
Yeah, and this is somebody who's watching Middlesbrough play, which is probably not the most exciting team in the world, but it was more exciting. It seemed more exciting, and also, you know, where you live is quite important. Living in Livingston, getting to Edinburgh or getting to Glasgow at the age of 11, 12 was not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah,
you know,
it always seemed quite hard to work out how to do it as well. But you know. But it was a time where it was violent and horrible, I think, you know. Having said that, I got beaten up twice in Aberdeen. I got beaten up in my first week in Aberdeen. First time I went out was to see the adverts at the university. And so I was walking home and got jumped and kicked in, you know. It's like, welcome.
So you did a fanzine as well, did you, when you were at school?
Yeah, well, it's a slightly tedious story. I did one when I was in like primary 7, which was a revolutionary publishing model where I drew it with felt pen, and there was only one copy, but you could rent it. So it was
that's great marketing.
It was like 2p.
Yeah.
And then if you give it to everyone in the class, you got 60p. So that was the first one, and then I did a sort of inspired by sniffing glue and all of that. I did one at high school called Blow Your Nose on This, which is kind of embarrassing, but it was a go at doing something.
Yeah.
And my friend Ian, who was in my band The Commercials, his mum photocopied it at the Ben Sayers Golf Club factory where she worked at in her lunch break. So.
Well, how did you produce it then? Was it cut and paste?
Yeah, it was just did I have cow gum? I might have had cow gum. I did a school magazine where we kind of did it ourselves, so we pasted it all ourselves to save money, and it was consequently a bit of a mess. But they gave us cow gum and paste up boards, so I kind of had a slight knowledge of how to do that.
Yeah.
But it was just cut out and stuck on paper and photocopied.
So is it fair to say then that that's what you wanted to do at an age, become a journalist, a writer?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a journalist. They had a careers night at school, probably like 4th year or something like that, and I said I wanted to be a journalist, and the guy said, "You're too intelligent. You can't be a journalist," because you only needed 5 grades to be a journalist. Because it was like a craft thing, and then you would go to Napier College and all that. So I was a bit lost after that, but I never gave up on the idea. But journalism is one of those jobs where it's not clear how to become one. There isn't there are a lot of courses now. There weren't so many courses then, but even if you do courses, it's all about brass neck really, and breaking in that way. So I got there eventually.
Yeah. So then you did your O grades, and then Scottish Highers.
Yeah, I did Highers, and I did 6th year where you do not very much, which is to train you to be a student, where you're going to not do very much for a while.
Okay.
And then, so I went to Aberdeen and did politics at Aberdeen. Around that time, my band, The Commercials. Yeah. I should say not my band. I sound like Mick Jagger, but the band I was in crossed over from the end of school to university and stuff.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a good career move because we were all in different places and consequently couldn't practice or play. You know?
Yeah. But you did release a single.
Yeah.
How did you do that? Because that's I think that was one thing. If I'd have known back then in the early '80s how to make a record, I should have done.
Yeah.
The bands that I was involved with.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of it about. I can't actually remember who knew. It was probably Ian, the guitarist. Ian's brother is Dave Anderson, who was in Amondoul 2 and Hawkwind briefly.
Yeah. They were the first band I saw in 1979.
Hawkwind?
Yeah, at the Usher Hall.
Wow. Wow. Well, Dave runs a studio, he still runs it, called Foal in Wales.
Okay.
And it's the second oldest residential place in Britain, or possibly the world, I can't remember. But all the rough trade bands used to go there. So Young Marble Giants and Delta 5. It was sort of a studio for them. So we had a way of making a reasonable quality tape. I'm not sure, I guess Ian probably knew how to do the record part as well, and the pressing and all that. He was in a splinter band who I think released a single first. The first band we were in was called the Instant Whips, and then they got a bit more musical, so they booted me out as the singer and got somebody who could sing a bit better, so they became the Whips. And the Whips had quite a big following in East Lothian with bikers. There was a biker gang called the Bader Meinhof out of Haddington. Yeah. And so they had a big following, and they used to play in Edinburgh quite a lot, and they produced a record which I co-wrote one of the songs on the B-side, so that was my claim to fame.
There was quite a big mod scene in Edinburgh a bit later, in East Lothian a bit later on.
Was there?
Yeah.
Where about? You sure it wasn't just golf jumpers?
No, I'm forgetting my East Lothian location, just at the top, just before you get into Musselburgh.
All right, okay.
There was quite a few Northern Soul events.
Preston Pans.
Preston Pans around there.
Port Seaton, kind of Tranent.
Yeah, Tranent.
Yeah.
You know. but because I think round about then, Rough Trade, there was a broker that came about called Making, so they were brokering quite a lot of the pressing of records into MPO. You know,
I do remember we sent off the tape,
which
is in the book actually, and this is awful. I don't know how we thought this would work, but we duplicate them ourselves on kind of crap cassette players, and we made. We screwed the tapes together ourselves and then we wrote on them and stuff. I mean, the quality was really terrible.
Yeah.
But we sent them off, and I sent one off to Johnny Waller, who was like an influential Edinburgh journalist at that time. He wrote for Sounds, managed some bands. And he wrote back, and mixed comments, but he wrote back.
And he was a nice fella.
Yeah.
I'd spent a bit of time in his company.
Yeah, he was quite important at that time, I think.
Yeah.
Because he was joined on to other places. But I do have still in a box, I've got a note I got back from Rough Trade going, thanks for sending your tape, sorry it's taken so long, we quite like it, but we don't want to do anything with it, but have you considered doing it yourselves? And at the time I took that as encouragement. Now I take it as polite, go away.
Or a sales opportunity.
Possibly, yeah.
Now we can make it happen for you.
Well, and they did take the record, and our record did appear in the Rough Trade advert, which is like, I may still make that into a T-shirt, because we're next to bands like Felt and Joseph Kay and things like that, so it felt like it was worth it.
Were they doing the distribution at that point, or?
I think a lot of it came through Fast Forward, which was sort of an offshoot of Fast.
Yeah.
I think it was in Alva Street. No, it wasn't Alva Street, it was Cadzow Place. Oh, I don't know, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
So they knew how to do it in Scotland. Fast Forward became a very influential thing.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure of the chronology of when that happened, but it grew from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was a way in Scotland of getting that done. And later on, Fast Forward was really important for a lot of the kind of C86 type bands and all that.
Yeah. So did you keep any copies of the single? Because they're worth a bit of money now.
Well,
I'm having a look on Discogs.
Well, Discogs, the funny thing is, like, they go up to I've seen 65, 75 quid.
Yeah.
I've never met anyone that paid that, but somebody must have at some point.
Yeah.
We had a few boxes left, and when my mum was clearing out, she threw them out because she wasn't very impressed by them, so it's a bit annoying. I've got a few copies, but I don't know, I can't imagine. I just think it's a theoretical value. I don't know if there's a queue of people waiting to buy it.
A lot of it depends on the quality. So if you've got a mint record, then some people will pay top of the range. But if I look at Discogs, you generally look at the medium price as the going rate.
I've bought very few things off there, but I did buy. I wanted a proper copy of the Valves single. Yeah. Because I'd lost mine, and I bought that, and it was supposed to be VG condition and all that. And it was totally wrecked when I got it.
It's there's some dealers on there that are probably not so trustworthy.
Yeah. But I encourage people to buy it if they see it. It's definitely an investment.
So you moved. When did you move to Aberdeen?
79.
79, and you were there for?
I was there for 5 years.
Okay.
Degree was 4, and there was no jobs. So at that point, my girlfriend Jane at that time was also in the commercials. She was a year behind, so she was working at university, or rather was studying at university, and I did this thing which was a kind of scam of the university, where they said you could enroll for first year courses for like 75 quid or something like that, so you were technically part of the university. And you could go to some lectures, which for me meant I could edit the student paper. Because I was sort of a student. I mean, it was terrible. I did Russian literature, and I stopped going after a while, because part of Russian literature was, here is a map of Russia. Can you now put Tolstoy's birthplace on this map. And I thought, no, I want to be alienated. I want to be reading Penguin Modern Classics.
So then, from Aberdeen, when did the band split up then? Because the single came out, I'm trying to remember, I'd say 81.
Yeah, I'd probably get it wrong. I think we were supposed to be big in 81 according to Dave McCulloch Sounds.
Okay, yeah.
The other band he mentioned was Felt, so they didn't become big either, but they became bigger than us. So I think it probably came out in 81.
Yeah.
We were sort of done by then, really. I mean, it's one of those weird things that you kind of could get together to make the recordings and stuff like that, but one of the band was in Glasgow, one was in North Berwick, two of us were in Aberdeen at certain points. We had exploding drummers, so we never had a drummer, you know. So it wasn't really, I mean, I look back now and you think, well, if you wanted to make a go of it, you would actually just have to spend some time doing it.
Yeah.
But we just had this kind of hobby feeling to it where we thought, you know, there's little moments where you go, oh, that was one of those moments where if you'd reacted the right way.
Yeah.
Like we played in Glasgow. I actually found a tape of this, which I didn't know existed when I was clearing out my mum's house, and so there's live tape. And I've played it down and I thought, well, we must have been shit. And I'd listened to this live tape, I quite liked it. I thought, oh, and listen, applause. I didn't know there was applause and people shouting for an encore.
Yeah.
I think that was at Ross Hall in Glasgow. And at that, somebody came up to us and said, you should come to the Hellfire Club and practice and stuff like that. And that was a really important place for bands in Glasgow.
Yeah.
We weren't in Glasgow, so we couldn't do it. But, you know, it's like, oh, there's little junctions where, like, you might have been able to do something. The opposite of that is the time we went to Postcard Records flat to play our tape to them. So we just knocked on the door. We didn't make an appointment.
Did you? Okay.
We just went.
Yeah.
And there was Alan Horn, and opinions vary. I think it was Stephen Daly. Some people say it was Edwin that was in the room. I don't think Edwin was there.
Yeah.
I think Stephen was there. And there was like two rooms as far as I remember, and Alan Horn was very Alan Hornish, and so he played played the tape, and we were sat cringing as he played the tape, and he said, "You sound like the Au Pairs." And I was like, oh, okay, we'll get our coats. We were done.
So that never came off?
No.
So have you got any recordings that you didn't release?
Yeah, I've got a CD which I can give you, which I don't know if you know about Misthetics, which was a guy called Chuck in Chicago who ran a label called Hyped to Death.
Okay.
So he did this thing for a few years where it's like the nuggets of post-punk.
Yeah.
So I think he worked in a record shop at one point. So he was of the view that the creative part of punk was post-punk.
Right, yeah.
Where all the rules had been broken, people
Yeah.
didn't know what they were doing,
Yeah.
so they did really weird stuff.
Yeah.
And nobody tutored them or anything, and strange things happened. So he collected those records and he put out a series of quite a lot of CDs.
Yeah.
And he did one for Scotland. I've got in my bag there, which I'll give you.
Okay.
He did one for Scotland, and the commercials are on there. And so he said, "Have you got any stuff?" I always thought, I'm not sure if this is true, but I always thought the stuff we did just after the single, which we did in a Porta studio, was slightly more interesting. But it's on the cusp of weirdness because it's Depeche Mode. I know half the band was really into Depeche Mode at that point.
Okay. Yeah.
So we got a Casio keyboard, like the really cheap ones that are on that record, Da Da Da.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
So there's one tune like that which has one of those presets, which depends on how much you like that thing, but it's got lovely guitar and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to oversell it because it's still got the same reservations about it as everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a hidden track on there. There's a track from the record, I think, and then there's a sort of hidden track. So
yeah. No, it's I think in this day and age, it's kind of like finding music that's not being released that has a quality.
Yeah.
Is a good thing.
Well, I mean, even if it's only historical, because you go, what did things sound like then? They don't sound like you think they sound. You know, the 80s were not like... Everyone thinks the 80s were all about wham and kind of loads of money and all that.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of a London image of the 80s.
Yeah.
For me, you know, and everyone I knew, the 80s was about not having a job and having no prospect of a job and signing on, but maybe being on one of these government schemes that let you do weird stuff and not punish you.
Yeah.
And that's how you know, Creation Records came out of that, Primal Scream came out of that, you know, because they were given a license to fool around for a bit. So I don't want to give the Thatcher government too much credit, but you know, there was a strange loophole there where good things were allowed to prosper.
Whereas nowadays it's difficult to be creative and finance yourself. If you know, if you can't sign on and do little and get your band and you know, work your band until you get on top of the pops.
I think it's sort of totally different, the economics now, because anyone can record on a Mac or something like that, because you can get that stuff. Whereas recording was semi-mysterious when I was growing up. Portrait studios were coming in, making it sort of plausible, but it was still a kind of thing you had to do with professionals if you wanted to do it properly. You know?
So you then from Aberdeen moved to Edinburgh. Was that 84?
Yeah, 84 I would say.
And you got a funny job as an editor, or the way you got it was a bit of a strange one.
Well, in Edinburgh I used to go to the place called the Unemployed Workers Centre, which was a really good place.
Where was that?
It was on Picardy Place, roundabout in a basement. The Trades Council was above, and symbolically I think the Trades Council is now a casino, so it's kind of working class. Temple got turned into a casino, but in the basement we used to just hang around, and they sort of taught us video and stuff like that. And it was semi-political, like they kind of gave us a tenner to occupy the Conservative Party headquarters for the morning and stuff like that, you know. That's kind of... But I'd done the fanzine at that point, and they were really keen, and they encouraged me to kind of keep going at the fanzine. So someday I kind of met, I think through that, told me there was this job going on in Pilton at the it was called the Commune at that point, the paper, but they were relaunching the community newspaper in Pilton under a European unemployment scheme through Lothian Regional Council. So again, it was one of these strange schemes, and the qualification for the job was not experience or competence. It was that you had to be unemployed for 6 months, and I'd been unemployed for 18 months or 2 years or something like that, so I was super qualified. So I went down there, and there was because it was a community thing, it was in one of the huts at Purney Hall Primary School, and there was like a room big enough for a primary class, and there was like 18 people in the circle, because it was the whole community group was sitting there, and then I was put in the chair there to do this interview, and you know, I sort of stumbled my way through it, but I got the job. But my friend subsequently told me that there was only 2 candidates, and the other guy turned up drunk. So,
so by default, but quite shortly after that would be when Cut was launched in Edinburgh. So that it was either the end of 84 or the beginning of 85.
Yeah, I'm not sure about when it launched, but for me, what came for me was I used to freelance for the NME in that period, doing concert reviews and little things for the Thrills section. And out of the fanzine, I had met James Brown, now the famous James Brown.
I know James.
Of Loaded and all that, and so he stayed at my flat in Polwarth Gardens one time when he was up with Big Flame, because he was just digging around with Big Flame. And I really don't know how we met him or stuff, but he ended up at our flat, and but you know, he was very nice, and I've got a letter from him where he sort of says, oh, if you want to do writing, jamming's a thing, you could write for jamming.
For Tony,
and stuff like that. So I did bits for Tony Fletcher. I was pretty crap at it, like I did Alone Again Or, who became the shaman, and I was too shy, so I interviewed the drummer rather than the singer. And so I got a terse letter back going, "You do not interview the drummer." So I was sort of getting into music journalism like that. So I used to go to these. I had this sort of routine where I would be sent to things. So there was really good shows like Tom Waits and people like that, where I'd be sent to the show, and you'd have to write it overnight. But there was no faxes or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I have to type it overnight. So I'd be up till 3 writing it.
Yeah.
Like the show finishes at 12 or 1 or something. Go back to my flat, write it, and then I had to meet the photographer at the station for the, I think it was 5:50 train, something like that.
Yeah.
So you'd have to go back to the station with your typed review, and he would put his photos on the Red Star to get there for the next day, and they'd appear. I mean, it seems mad, and it also seems mad that I would do that for quite a small amount of money, but getting into the show was exciting. So that led to ultimately to I wrote for Cut, not for maybe the first year of Cut's existence, but when Cut became less just Scottish, because it was purely Scottish at first, and then it branched out, and Alan Campbell became the editor. I was more involved then, and it was a strange, amazing, bizarre little experiment, but it was a lot of really talented people came out of there.
Yeah, so. I think Edinburgh at that point had a lot of inspirational people, events going on. Yeah, that's and it's always been a city that's inspired. Even if you go back to the Bay City Rollers, there were things going on that might not have happened in other cities.
Well, I think so. I mean, it was kind of Alan Campbell who did Cut. I mean, he put on all these shows at the Hoochie Coochie Club, which was
with Sam.
And Sam, and that was amazing. Also a very cool club. But there were other, Coasters and Tiffany's, great venues for small bands to play, which aren't there anymore. And
the nightclub, because that was
the nightclub was amazing,
when the nightclub was putting on punk gigs as a teenager, that was a go-to place for me until they got banned. I think 82.
No, the nightclub was amazing, and it was just a square room, wasn't it? I saw Nico in there. I took pictures of Nico in there with the Cuban Heels as their band, which was actually terrible, but I saw her. So Orange Juice, or one of the big postcard nights in there, was great. And also I remember seeing The Fall in there, and we were queuing to get in, and Marky Smith came in with his anorak on and his lyrics in a plastic bag.
Going back to what you were saying about when you interviews, how do you set out to do an interview? Because for me, I try and start at the beginning, but I'll work my way around it with regards where you're led, I suppose.
I mean, there's a couple of things about that. I mean, subsequently after the music bit, I became a kind of features journalist, so I was doing interviews every week, and music interviews and general interviews are slightly different. Like musicians are the worst people to interview because they think they're cool and they don't have to say anything, and humiliating you is part of the process. So that's hard. For general interviews, I always think the best ones are where you have a set of questions that you've made in an order, but you never look at them because you managed to have a conversation and you followed it and you were interested enough. That's a success. But you kind of have to have an idea of what you're looking for, and try and. I always sort of keep it in my head of, okay, does this answer that question? Well, I found actually for quite a lot of the interviews I did, I was just saying, why do you do it and how do you do it?
I did a fanzine when I was 14. I did a few, and I look at the questions now and I'm like, it was called A Way of Life, but it was a punk fanzine. You have a lot of it, kind of like is dependent on where you live, and we lived in Livingston up until 83, so my music, you kind of like, if you got into punk 78, 79, you had to buy Signs because they were the only magazine paper that was writing about punk. and you couldn't escape it in Livingston, where they seem to grab hold of it for a lot longer than say Edinburgh, and Glasgow. But then we moved to Edinburgh in '83, and my musical taste started to change because there was a different vibe in Edinburgh. And 6 months later, I ended up in Manchester for a year, and that's when hip hop and electro was bursting through. So your location, your social conditioning is really where your musical taste.
Yeah, but it's also good that time was so fluid. So you liked all that stuff,
Yeah.
Because I used to DJ at a place called the Flesh Exchange in Aberdeen.
Right.
And it was like Africa Bambaataa, Working Week, punk things and kind of Northern Soul things and Talking Heads, Staple Singers, you just threw it all together.
Yeah.
Time Zone, you just kind of...
Yeah. But that I think that was the thing about the late 70s and the early 80s. There was so much music that was happening it would change quite fast, quite quickly.
It was open and you had to keep up with it.
So did you work for the Scotsman?
Yeah, I worked for the Scotsman for a long time. I worked for Scotland on Sunday First for a few years, and then the Scotsman. They've sort of blurred now in my mind, but I had 15 years or something like that. A long time anyway. I can't remember exactly, but yeah.
And what made you move to London?
Well, my partner got a job down here, so it was just a life thing, hasn't been great for my career really, because it's harder to be in the London papers, but but interesting, different life.
Yeah. But then when did the book come out? A year ago?
Almost. No, it's just under a year ago it came out. Yeah.
And the book is called? I'll give you the cue.
Hang on. It's called Alternatives to Valium: How Punk Rock Saved a Shy Boy's Life.
So because you've done it in two different chapters. So the second half is the fanzine stage.
Yeah,
and the first, the first is really part of your growing up and your experiences.
Yeah, I mean the way I looked at it was like finding a voice and then using a voice.
Yeah.
And actually learning to listen. I decided because I became a prompt rather than a performer. I thought I could be a punk singer, but actually I could use my voice, but it wasn't very pleasant on the ear. So then learn to listen was my thing. But I wanted to. I'm not sure people picked up what I was trying to do with the book, but the second part of it, I was trying to kind of explore something about celebrity journalism and what the process was and how that slightly differed from what historical versions of things become. Like for instance, there's a piece about Nirvana in there where I was sent to interview Nirvana at the Cotton Studios in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And it was just at the moment where they had just gone through the stratosphere, so they're playing in a venue far too small, and Kurt was very ill and wasn't going to go on and all that, and so instead of speaking to Kurt, I was put in a broom cupboard with a microwave and Chris Novoselic, and he spoke to me for 20 minutes and then he disappeared. He went out and left me not locked but shut in this cupboard waiting for him. He never came back, so I went out and sure enough there they were kind of reviving Kurt in another room to make him go out and perform, like getting him on his feet.
Yeah. And
he played, and in Legend, that's a legendary show where it's fantastic. It wasn't. It was a painful, difficult show. There are recordings of it, so people can make their own mind up. But it was kind of brutal, incredible that he went through it, but painful to watch kind of experience. But the Legend is a bit different, and also the legend of what Nirvana are is totally different. So I went back and I went, well, what were all the things Chris Novoselic said to me? What was it like?
Yeah.
And it's not like a big difference. He just thinks he's slightly different from the big hair metal kids.
Yeah.
But he doesn't actually have any material difference from them. He just thinks he's a bit different, and you know, everyone has drawn Nirvana into this argument where they were a totally different thing, but they weren't. They were stoner kids from the Northwest who were into heavy records.
Yeah.
And a lot of that Sub Pop stuff was like a different version of heavy rock.
Yeah.
It wasn't you know, it had a punk attitude, but it wasn't a kind of massive change.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to present the thing as it was at the time and go, look, that's what it looked like. A bit like we were saying about when you find old music, it's actually from a period, you can go, well, that's what it really sounded like. It's not like I imagined, you know.
Yeah.
So I was trying to just capture things as they actually were, rather than the myth of what they were, you know.
Yeah. And Finny Tribe challenged you on a review once, didn't they?
Finny Tribe, God bless them. Well, they weren't the only ones, actually, but Finny Tribe, I was walking through, I'd reviewed Finny Tribe for the NME, I think.
Right.
And it was their most arty period where they were...
I saw them at the Carlton Studios once, and
I think that was
they
the one.
They were very arty, where they were climbing up on the scaffolding.
Yeah.
But there was, if you remember, they had a poet, I can't remember his name, and one of our friends got up behind the poet and started playing the drums, just mad, and he was there for about 5 minutes before they got him off stage, and we were just...
I approve of that, that's good.
You know.
Well, anyway, you know, they were sort of like that, and they used
very
to,
arty.
They used to talk about art terrorism, so I always thought that was complete nonsense to talk about art terrorism. You know, you can't. They're not the same thing, and it's embarrassing. So I'd written this thing, and I was walking through Princess Street Gardens one day, and saw the Finny Tribe coming towards me, and they're quite a forbidding-looking bunch of guys. And they stood in a circle round me and said, "We're just discussing your review and what we thought of it." And I thought, oh no, I'm done for. But they took it on, and they forgive me because they were thoughtful guys.
Yeah.
And Davey of the Finny Tribe has subsequently said that he thinks I was right to say what I said. So another band that stopped me was Good and Gone. I don't know if you remember them.
I don't remember them. Where were they from?
They were from Glenrothes.
Okay.
And they were a kind of Captain Beefhearty kind of blues band. Quite good. They had their mini album was called Methyl Box. So, but I reviewed them and met them in the Doric Tavern. And
I know the Doric. My sister used to work there.
Yeah, and so I was forcefully told that I had made a mistake. Put it that way.
But it's kind of like the way that I see it. It's subjective, isn't it? You know, it's kind of like, well, there's no rights or wrongs, and it's better to have an opinion than not to have an opinion.
No, I know. I think the thing I think now, looking back on some of that writing, and even on my fanzine, is that thing about music writing in that period was so sneering, and the writer was always trying to be more cynical and more on top of it all. Yeah. And I definitely had that, and I mean, I wasn't impressed by some bands. Yeah. And then I would do the kind of sneery NME writing. Yeah. And they would be kind of upset, you know. Yeah. And now I think, why did I? And it's because you had to be declamatory. So if you write, they're quite good, you know, they've got a bit of room for improvement. Well, nobody's going to run that.
but that's you know, you understand the old that I got. You realise that sounds in the NME had to be different from each other. Yeah. And you have to have the complete opposites, and you have to have that war in order to make it an interesting read. Yeah. And it's the same thing with doing a review. It's, you know, you can't do everything happy.
Well, you're always reacting to things, you know. I mean, I remember another person who objected was Harry Horse, who was in Swamp Trash. Okay. I remember him. He became an author and died subsequently, but he was a cartoonist on Scotland on Sunday, so I used to see him in the office now and then. And one time I happened to be sitting near him, and he just looked over to me and he went, "Oh, you ruined my career." And I said, "Oh, how'd you get that?" And he said, "Oh, we got a 10 out of 10 album review. Yeah. And then you did a live review and said we were shit." And I said, "Well, it can't have been much of a career if my live review could have blown it out of the water." Yeah. And he's like,
Yeah.
But it's embarrassing. But you know, I try not to be like that when I write now, cause but it's like finding a voice as well. You didn't know, you're teaching yourself criticism, so you don't have the long view of things. Yeah, it's just all new to you. So.
Yeah. But you know, particularly in this current climate where everything seems to be a bit beige, you know, you having an opinion is a good thing, you know.
Yeah. Well, to some extent. I mean, I think that the opposite of that is Twitter and social media, where you have to hate everything and hate it more than the last guy. So.
But Twitter is such a swamp fest, you know. I kind of like I had it for years and I didn't really use it, and I find it really interesting now because I can see certain angles being pushed in certain ways, and I'm like, that's a bit scary because, you know, there's some covert action that goes on across all social media platforms. You know, but it's an interesting medium to be involved with, and just block all the people that, you know, are trying to tell you, you know, what you should be doing.
You've got to do that. Yeah. I mean, there's always people that just think you weren't quite right, and they have to just. No.
So you on Twitter particularly, you post punk songs regularly.
I've just started doing that lately, just to amuse myself, and also because I should be doing something more important at the time. But yeah, I've got my singles box is quite close to where I write, so I'm just trying to find. I wasn't going to write about them, but now I've started writing about them.
Yeah.
But it's also, you know, those records are.
Is that okay now?
They're kind of interesting to kind of remember why you bought things and what was good at the time and all that. So
but you know, if you were living in North Berwick and you were going into Edinburgh occasionally, you were very much dependent on what the shops had.
A little bit, but there was a record shop in North Berwick called the Melody Centre.
Was that a good one?
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was run by Mr. Stewart, who I think was actually called James Stewart, so he should be played by James Stewart in the film of it. But he was I always say I think he was a secret jazz fan, but he was he would sell anything unless he had a moral objection. So he wouldn't order for a friend of mine the Ivor Biggin record because he just thought that was going too far. But he had all the punk singles round the window. Yeah. So I mean, I can remember the window. There were two locations of the shop, but the first one was in the building that the cinema, which is now demolished, used to be in.
Yeah.
And all the albums were flat in the window, and then the singles were round the bottom. So he had all these punk records with the picture sleeves round the bottom of the window, so you could go and look at them.
Yeah.
And he was quite good at getting stuff in. And then when he moved across the road, the shop was now a sweet shop called Sugar Mountain.
Okay.
He became a chart return shop, so he had absolutely bizarre, you know, all the coloured vinyl stuff. You know, strange shaped John Cooper Clarke records on orange vinyl, triangular. You know, he had all of that because they wanted chart return stuff. So, and it never sold in North Berwick, so it would go down in price. You know, it's like it was a strange little thing.
I mean, it's. I had a shop for a few years, and it is a strange trying to get the balance right between what you want to sell and what actually sells is quite tough. You know,
he was quite a kind of. He didn't say much, but I remember I went in there in my early teens, and I tried to order Bonnie Tyler's "Lost in France."
Okay.
And he said to me, "I don't think you like that record. I don't think that's one for you." And I thought, okay. And I realised later it was just Bonnie Tyler's hair I was trying to kind of buy through the medium of vinyl. But he helped me out and pushed me on the right path, you know.
He did the right thing there.
Yeah, he let me buy Slade records forever. That was fine. But But yeah, no, the record shop's very important. There was another one in Portobello. What was it called?
Where was that? Was that a little one on the corner?
Oh, I've forgotten what it was called.
It was one in Musselburgh wanted. What was that called? Ards.
Yeah. Oh no, Ards was in Leith, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay. There was one on Great Junction Street.
Yeah, that was Ards.
Was that Ards?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Allen's of Portobello.
That's it. Yeah.
And you know that had very weird stuff in it as well. Quite often, quite cheap. I've got looking through my singles. Quite a lot of them have got like 10p stickers on them because you know he got these strange post-punk things like Eddie Maloff and Sunshine Patterson 12 inches and things like that. It's like, oh, I'll have that.
I mean, when I kind of like, because I would always do the central Edinburgh shops, and then once every 3 months I'd go into East Lothian and do Haddington and Musselburgh and Portobello.
Yeah.
And see what I could find down there. This is during the 80s, you know. And I remember Alan's in Portobello picking up, I think, 5 of the first Cameo albums, which is something you would never have seen in any shop in Edinburgh at that point, you know, at a decent price, you know.
Yeah, no, it was a gold mine, really. It was a bit unregulated, wasn't it? Things were just washing around all around the place.
Yeah. See, I had a discussion with Bruce Finley on Twitter like 2 weeks ago, because I remember at the end of his tenure at the shop at Sandwick Place that they put a load of albums in there that looked like a load of deleted albums. You know, I didn't know what any of it is, but he said it didn't happen, and I'm like, I'm still pretty certain it did. You know, but I think with Edinburgh, the shop scene changed as soon as the Virgin Megastore opened on Princess Street.
Yeah, the big one, yeah.
Yeah. Which was a great shop, but at the same time it affected the smaller shops.
It totally did. I interviewed Richard Branson that day.
Did you?
Yeah. And it was good because he told me, well, I interviewed him in a taxi to the airport, and then we stopped. He had a hotel out by the airport, and so he did a kind of Alan Sugarish visit where they didn't know he was coming, and had his lunch with me at the airport, and they were all like fluffing him. And then I interviewed him on the plane to London. So it was a strange 2 hours. But he was talking about that record shop, and he said, I've got this principle with these record shops is that they must have a cafe in them because we want to recreate this meeting place idea for record shops where it's not just shopping, you're going there for a social occasion, you're going to do something. And I said, this one doesn't have a cafe. And he went, oh.
But even that one on Tottenham Court Road never had a cafe. You know?
No, but that was his idea. So somebody had pulled the wool over his eyes at some point.
Alastair McKay, Alternatives to Valium, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.